So obviously your team name's pretty self-explanatory, but tell me about how you came up with the truck name.
I guess you can blame that on me. It's pretty simple. It's a four-wheel drive truck, and we're just playing around. So it's the way I look at it. Other people like to have fun with it, but I do too. I can't lie. So it's catchy.
Go big or go home. Hero or zero move on Saturday night.
Jim and Paul Holman's face is on the side of Mount Rushmore of pulling. There's no question about it.
That would be the word I would use to describe Ken. He's a legend.
Behind the Hook, Season 3. Stories from the National Tractor Pulling Championships.
I explain it to people that the pulling sled is like a flatbed trailer, and there's a weight box that's on the top of this flatbed, and when you start pulling at the starting line, so it transfers the weight from the wheels to the skid pan and becomes harder and harder to pull the farther you go down the track. And of course it's 300 feet. I always explain to people that when you go to a NASCAR race or a drag race, you hear the engine, for just a blip, just zoom and it's past you, and a tractor pull, it's all right in front of you in 300 feet, so you get to hear the engine for about 15 seconds, so you get a lot more of that sensation than you would at other kinds of motorsports.
Wauseon, Ohio, home to one of the largest county fairs in Ohio, and 12-time Grand National Champion Holman Brothers Pulling Team.
I'm Paul Holman from Wauseon, Ohio, one half of the Holman Brothers four-play pulling team.
I'm Jim Holman with the Holman Brothers four-wheel drive four-play pulling team.
We're both motorheads. We love to work on engines.
Well, I'm a farmer, and I had a four-wheel drive truck on the farm that I used to pull a gooseneck grain trailer on the farm, and some friends of mine goaded me into taking it to a truck pull, so I did. I won all 4 classes the first time I went, so I was hooked pretty hard from then on. That's how I got started.
Early on, I used to love sprint cars, so I always say if he hadn't got me into tractor pulling, I probably would have had a sprint car eventually.
A friend that I've farmed with, we came here to watch the pulls in other places, and we talked, said, boy, we'd like to do that. In '78, we built the truck we have now, which originally was called the Salt Shaker. We started campaigning that in '78, and then he dropped out in '85. I ran it by myself in '85, and then Jim came in '86. We've been together ever since.
The four-wheel drive truck, of course, its front and rear tires are driving. It's 6,200 pound maximum. In order to keep the front tires engaged with the ground and to dig, we try to keep all the weight of the four-wheel drive truck towards the front. Hanging out the front, you'll see the large boxes. That's to keep the front tires engaged. The chain hooks to the back of the truck and provides a tremendous amount of pull down, so that's how the rear tires stay engaged. They try to build the trucks as light as they can to keep all that weight out front to keep the front tires engaged. As far as the engine, it's a 650 cubic inch maximum displacement. It has to be a V8 with 1 camshaft, 2 valves per cylinder, 1 spark plug. It's a 5-inch bore center maximum, and naturally aspirated. It's a big difference. All the other classes you see in tractor pulling either using superchargers or turbochargers. Ours is the only naturally aspirated class, which is kind of one of the things that drew us to four-wheel drive. We like naturally aspirated race engines, the sound and working with them.
All the trucks now are tube frame. It's kind of fun to still run the same 60 truck frame and go out and compete with all this new technology. A little bit of satisfaction goes along with that.
Jim and Paul have been fixtures in Pull Town for decades, having amassed many wins and coming into the 2024 event 9-time BG Ring winners.
The pullers are kind of like a family, so our competitors are really good friends too, so we enjoy hanging out with our friends. It's like a endless all summer camp out with your friends, you know. So we enjoy visiting, you know, with our competitors and helping each other out. You get a lot of satisfaction from that.
We're so close to home, it's like a hometown pull. So we park the same place every year. You know, many people come around, you know, to see us and wish us luck. That's great.
A lot of mental notes back in the staging area and trying to make that critical decision. Okay, where am I going to run on the track and how am I going to drive? I tend to, again, to listen to the trucks that are running ahead of us when they're leaving the line. How much power are they putting into the track? How much will it take? I watch their tires to see when they break them loose. We keep mental note on where they're running on the track, because a four-wheel drive is different than the rest of the classes. Our front end stays on the ground so we can steer and we can run a foot from the line if we want to.
Our class is so competitive that you have to have everything perfect.
I often talk about truck and tractor pulling having a Mount Rushmore. Jim and Paul Holman's face is on the side of Mount Rushmore.
I know they don't spend the most amount of money, but they get more out of their money than anybody else does. They just come in, they just kick your ass.
Just a very professional team.
That truck has not changed. That truck has been steady.
If you look down the list and you're leading and the final truck that pulls out on the track is foreplay, in your mind you are doubting whether or not you're going to win.
With Jim behind the wheel, their first hook yielded a fourth-place finish.
Now I'm just farming corn and soybeans, about 650 acres. Been cutting back the last few years, and then I'm also helping a young man get started. I tell people I'm helping him get started and he's helping me finish, so it works out pretty good. My grandparents bought this farm in 1931. They were dairy farmers up until my dad had a heart attack in 1965. He was milking 50 cows at the time, farming about 300 acres. Doctors advised him to stop farming and find something easier to do. He sold all the machinery in the dairy herd and kept the land. And when I was a junior in high school, I convinced him that I wanted to farm for a living, so he set me up to start farming. I farmed 80 acres of the farm that year and then just gradually increased from there.
During the off-season, the Holmans design and build products for their fellow competitors.
So this is going to Georgia. This happens to be a Ford Hemi. It's a 650. We actually competed against this motor several years ago. So it was a complete system. There were a lot of things that you could do a lot better, and technology, you know, has changed. So we basically stripped everything off down to the manifold and the lid, and then replaced it with new metering valve, shut-off valve, bypasses, and then basically calibrate the system. I would expect to see probably close to 80 to 100 horsepower with this change. So another one of the products that we make that probably most people don't realize is we make kill switches, and we make them for all the classes in pulling. Started with four-wheel drive trucks, but every vehicle has to have a kill switch. We had a incident where the kill switch killed the motor during the pull without them pulling the switch. Out of necessity, we just created our own switch for our truck. So we started with just an aluminum block. We use a stainless steel pin that has an O-ring on it. So when the pin's in, little detent there holds the pin in with the ball switch, and you pull the pin, the ball switch flips and kills your engine. It's hundreds and hundreds of kill switches. I think we ship probably 40 of these a year. That's what I do in the winter when things get slow, make a batch of kill switches. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I went to school at the University of Toledo and got my engineering degree, and then started with Dana Corporation in Toledo about a month before I graduated college. So I've been there ever since, just surpassed 40 years at Dana. I've applied a lot that I learned in college and at work to our truck, and I've also applied things to Dana products that I learned doing the truck, building the engines that I put into Dana products, and actually have some patents on some things.
So this would be a typical powertrain for a Class 8 vehicle, 18-wheeler running down the highway. Dana makes all these components. This is a tandem rear axle, and then in between the tandems we have what we call an interaxle drive shaft. The drive shaft is actually the area that I work in for Dana, and then the main drive shaft goes into the front axle, and then Dana also supplies the steer axle. So the drive shaft is actually the product that Dana founded in 1903 by a gentleman named Clarence Spicer. That's where we get the Spicer universal joints. So yeah, he holds the original patent for the universal joint, Clarence Spicer. Okay, this is the Dana drive shaft and electric axle dyno room. So what we do in this cell is we run the drive shaft products under torque, at speed, and at an angle to test the durability of the universal joint, the bearing life. We monitor continuously the drive shaft speed, the torque, and also the temperature of the universal joints dynamically. So this is one of our commercial test trucks. This is a Kenworth T700, and we're going to use this truck to test the rubber isolator for the center bearing that I showed you in my office. So most commercial trucks have what we call a two-piece drive line, so it's got a two-shaft system, and the part that we're testing is the bearing and isolator that supports two drive shafts in the vehicle. This is a very common arrangement for a Class 8 over-the-road tractor.
With Paul piloting their second hook of the weekend, the team landed atop the field in first place and also secured a record 10th ring.
Believe it or not, it's as much fun to be the one that's on the sideline watching than it is to drive the truck. It probably sounds crazy, but it is. A lot of times in interviews they'll say, well, who's the better driver? That varies, and neither one of us is the better driver. And sometimes you get in a groove where you're doing the right things and you've got your coordination right. And then there's times where you just can't seem to make the truck do what you want it to do. So, like I said, it kind of goes in streaks.
After accumulating 3 wins and 12 top 5 finishes, the Holman brothers ended the Grand National season in a respectable second place. Now their focus turns to 2025. Next time on Behind the Hook.
It wasn't until 1970 I ran my first funny car. A friend of mine said, I want to take you to a tractor pull. I think you'd like it.
My mom, as everyone knows, used to run down the track. So there I am, 100 feet. Well, how in the heck? Get the hell out of the way. So that's when I started running. And I didn't realize people were watching me.
Behind the Hook, Season 3. Stories from the National Tractor Pulling Championships.